an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, Season 2, Episode 10. Will Scarsdale like Josh's Shayna Punim? In this episode, Josh goes and meets a lot of Rebecca's family. And it goes really well. Too well, in fact. It was awkward in ways I had not anticipated. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Megan for commissioning this episode. Megan is a Crazy Ex-Girlfriend MVP at this point. So Shayna Punim, I had to look this up because I read that title like 11 times and I was like, I can't. So it means pretty face. BT dubs. Any of you who were curious but did not bother, which I would understand. And Erica says, hey, so there's a surprise video tied to this episode. It's that the song Period Sex has a music video. It had clips from this episode, so I couldn't share it before now. I'll post it in the group. Oh, okay, cool. Thank you, ma'am. Guys, this episode is so excellent. It's that last 5 minutes that really sends it over the edge into truly wonderful for me. Y'all know I've been saying Rebecca needs to spend some time alone, and seeing her therapist think for a moment that Rebecca's gonna do that, and then watching it get ripped away the way that she did. Relatable. She is all of us. The thing about it all is that I know most of us have been where Rebecca is. Many people have experienced being in a relationship for the wrong reasons, maybe at the wrong time, whatever. And we believe, forgive me, I'm going to adjust my mic here a little bit so I don't have to lean forward quite as far. I think there's a lot of us that believe more than we care to admit in the alignment of fate, the stars, whatever. A lot of us believe that it's something, if it's meant to be, will happen. And if it is not meant to be, then everything working against you is part of the, divine will of the universe. And we have that episode where Rebecca basically walks around looking for a sign on whether or not it should be Josh or Greg, because she's trying to choose between the two of them. And in many ways, this episode is like a part 2 of that, because she really wants there to be some sort of this moment at the end where he proposes and he's using the Garfinkel ring. It's so riddled with the kinds of sentimental and sometimes in their way arbitrary markers that many of us have in our heads for something to be significant. It's a ring that she thought was gone forever. It was a ring that was very significant to her. And he managed to get it back. And he also remembered what it was. Now, again, he didn't remember any of this. He probably didn't have the money to get it. Probably her mother was the one who did all of this. We see her talking to him at the end, and one has to assume. I don't know if she knows that Rebecca pawned it or what, but that's part of what's like, I think, going to be the undoing of this moment for her, is that eventually Rebecca will figure out that her mother was behind this and that it wasn't just Josh being super thoughtful. It wasn't Josh having listened to her and retained things that she told him. It was her mother interfering, which is something that Rebecca is already so very sick of. And realizing that her mother interfered with him is going to really, I think that's going to be the deal breaker for her. But regardless, this moment of him proposing and busting into her therapy appointment of all things, which like really, I would completely understand if I had a friend to whom something like this happened with a guy that I did not think was very good for her, or who she might not be good for either. And she did a backpedal on her plans to break up with him, because it's just a perfect storm of a lot of factors that are of huge symbolism all coming together and seeming to be this fairy tale moment for her. And that's hard to fight, because like it or not, a lot of us are really sentimental. I consider myself to be less sentimental than a lot of people, and I am a huge sucker for shit like this. You have to put in a lot of effort to impress me, because it can be very, very shallowly done. And I can tell when it's something that is, done with minimal effort. But for me, this kind of thing, the symbolism of it all, can mean a lot. Especially, I'm somebody who's like just kind of recovering over the past 10 years from being extremely invested in astrology and tarot and numerology and all of that. Not to say that I don't believe any of it anymore, but I don't depend on it the way that I did. I used to really like search for answers, and it's kind of come to me recently that I need to like use that stuff as like an interesting insight into a thing and not as the answer. So all of that stuff used to mean a lot. And to a degree, that is because we want to believe that there is some sort of force out there that is trying to show us the path to happiness. We want to believe something is looking out for us. That's just something that a lot of us want to believe. And whether that takes the form of astrology or of religion or of circumstances like this, I can't be mad at people. It's tough out there, kids. And when you've got a small thing that makes you so happy, that seems to mean so much and point to a definitive answer on what you should do next, which is one of the hardest things to ever decide as an adult, is what to do next. That is a siren song that very few people are able to withstand. And that's part of what makes certain con artists so effective as well. They can orchestrate things so that it seems as if everything is coalescing like it's meant to be, because they know that there's a certain amount of superstition that we all sort of subscribe to, even if we don't think we do, So what I'm saying is, I really like this episode. It was super unexpected. But that ending, as much as I just want to like scream at Rebecca, I can't even do that. I can't be mad at her. It's just too goddamn understandable where she's coming from. It just is, man. She was so close, but like, she was so close to figuring something out that she doesn't want to figure out because it's hard and it sucks. And then this basically like emotional nuclear missile was pointed at her. Wow, come on. How is she supposed to fucking withstand that, Anyway, all right, let's back it up and let's talk about the episode from the start. So we begin this with Josh and Rebecca changing their Facebook profiles to in a relationship. And this is one of those moments that's like, extremely, extremely unrelatable to me. But that's because I have had very shady starts to my past few relationships. So I changed mine to in a relationship long after I really was in a relationship. And I did so when I had a very small friends list and had made sure to either unfriend or block anybody who was going to be judgmental about it. This kind of like open celebration of it is not a thing that I am like for the start of a relationship. I have not had this in a minute. And when I did, these platforms did not exist. So anybody who's in the chat who has like gone through this sort of phase, I'd be real interested to hear what it was like. And was the guy as like excited about it as you? Because there's such a stereotype about women being the ones to push for the inner relationship. But we have her and Josh sitting next to each other and each of them doing it at the same time. They're updating with like all of these fucking hashtags. Hashtag from the mountaintops, hashtag ever after, hashtag double rainbows, hashtag merrily, 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 life is but a dream. Oh my God. I hate him. So he says something about how Skylar's going to love this photo. And she's like, my cousin Skylar? Why is he following you? And he says, we're going to his bar mitzvah this weekend. I friended practically his whole class at Scarsdale Middle School. Jonah Leibowitz is playing hard to get, but I'll get him. I like a lot of this and hate it at the same time. Part of me loves the effort that he's putting forth. It's a little creepy, but it's also charming. And yet, we know a lot of this is based on Josh's feeling of like urgency that this relationship work out, because he has a sense of putting it out there and letting people down. And it's not like he will be embarrassed. That's really what it's about. He will be embarrassed to have gone through the third girl in as many months and have it crash and burn again. So it's just tiny sidebar, I swear. I read recently an interesting study about setting goals and the difference between people who share their goals and people who keep them to themselves. And it was not what I thought. I have read things that say, and I'm sure there are conflicting studies out there. There's, conflicting studies on fucking everything. But there have been several pretty big studies done about goal setting that imply the fewer people you tell, the more likely you are to reach your goal. That it's a private thing. And if you really set something for yourself that is for you, you will be more driven because you are embarking on something super personal than you will be if you feel pressured because you think everyone's looking at you and judging you when you do things. And I found this very interesting as somebody who recently was very excited to start this challenge on Instagram, Fit Girls Guide. I was so excited about it, you guys, because my gym had been closed. I hadn't been eating well. I was looking for something to get me excited again and motivated and organized. And so I shared in the days leading up to the challenge, starting journal pages and the calendar that they create for it and everything. And 3 days in, I realized that I hated it. It was just so not for me. It wasn't going well. And I was depressed. It wasn't that I was depressed, I was failing, although that did come eventually. I was depressed while doing it because I hated it so much. And it was a thing that I had to come to terms with, that I very publicly talked about how I was embarking on this thing. I went through a couple difficult days at the start and said I wasn't going to give up. And then I gave up. And it was mildly embarrassing. It wasn't horrific, but it was definitely oh God, I feel like a real schmuck, And I can see how setting a goal privately would be something that it's easier to pick yourself back up and keep going because you don't feel the weight of other people's eyes on you. And if you haven't told anybody that you're planning to make certain changes, you're not going to constantly feel them. Like, for example, me, when I was on Weight Watchers in high school, my father would constantly, are you allowed to eat that? Can you have that? Are you sure you're allowed? Isn't that too much? And it was the worst. And if you work with people who are like that, or if you live with family who are like that, I can see that being, So anyway, what I'm saying is Josh has made his relationship with Rebecca so incredibly public and has put so much of his own value on whether other people see him. I think there's an element with Josh. He wants to seem more grown up. I think he realizes that he's very immature and seen as kind of a child by a lot of people. And I think that he believes if he stays steady with this and that they are successful as a couple, it will look like he has matured and that they will, have in some ways proven people wrong. I'm not sure he's even thought it through that much, but I think that's part of what's behind this. And the two, Rebecca personally has a whole other thing going on where she has also made it super public. But for Josh, I finally think that I have found somebody and everybody knows about it and I've talked about it a ton. For Rebecca, I have gotten the thing I have said I wanted for so long. And everybody knows that this is what I wanted. So if I get it and then it's not good enough, then what? And I could see too, if you are Rebecca and you have friends who have tried to be like, maybe this isn't good or healthy, and you get the guy that you've been wanting and it turns out to kind of not be good or healthy, you feel like a schmuck. You don't want to admit it. There's a lot of pride attached to relationships like this. And it's part of why, I had a friend recently who was in a relationship with somebody that I had serious doubts about and frankly still do. And I found out after I kind of talked to them and was like, are you sure about this? Because I'm worried. I found out about a year later that there was some other shit going on that my friend didn't tell me about because she knew I already did not approve of this guy and I did not trust him. And she didn't want to confide in me about what was going on because she was worried what I would say because I had already made it clear where I stood. And that's part of the danger. When you talk to your friends, managing to straddle that line between I'm going to be honest with you, but I also still want you to feel comfortable talking to me. That's really tricky. And it's going to be different with everybody. But it bummed me out to realize that I had failed at that. I did not straddle the line properly. So, in this situation, Rebecca's a couple friends that I believe will have her back either way. But people out there certainly don't all feel that, I should mention too, as they were posting this, I was screaming at the television, you haven't told Valencia and you're changing your relationship status on Facebook? What the fuck? Come to find out that she has indeed been trying to get a hold of Valencia. And I wanted a little bit more from that because honestly, it has been on my mind so hard. The two of them being so ooey gooey and not hearing her mention Valencia's name once. And I was like, bitch, did you just forget about her? What are you doing? I wanted to see her texting Valencia and not getting a response. I wanted to feel the tension of knowing that Valencia is aware and not knowing exactly what she thinks or feels about it yet. Unfortunately, we don't get a super satisfying moment there. I appreciate that it's dealt with. She and Valencia talk, and Valencia is pretty honest with her. She's honestly so much more reasonable than probably most of us would be in that scene. But it's a kind of a, she essentially says to Rebecca, I'm not sure how I feel about this. Like, I feel like I'm not going to say that things are good between us, but I think it's kind of and I had to take a few days to decide how I felt. It's not my favorite thing. But I think I'm okay. And Rebecca says, are we okay? Because and the answer, like, it's okay if the answer is not yes. She says, good, because the answer is Rebecca says, I totally get it. But Valencia says, really, really maturely, don't worry about me. If you need to worry about someone, worry about yourself. Don't you see that Josh is all over the place and lost? And Rebecca says, that was before. And this is really like the crux of the matter. She keeps saying that was before. Like, the two of them simply having one another is gonna just somehow shift everything into place and make everything better. And what kills me is that there is some truth to life being better if you have a partner in it with you, watching your back, confiding in you, to whom you can confide. That is true. It can be a mutual source of support, love. It can, like Owen coming home when I've had a bad day and just hugging me and holding me for a minute can like recharge half my battery in like 5 minutes. It really can make a big difference. But that's when I'm just kind of having a bad day, when things have gone wrong. That's not stuff in my life that I am unhappy with fundamentally that he's fixing. It's a different thing. And so what Valencia is talking about here with her is, I know you have a tough relationship with your mom. You're taking him to see your family. Like, are you sure that this is going to be a good idea? And Rebecca says, I'm going to have Josh with me. It's going to be like I have a suit of armor. Love protects you. And the look that Valencia gives, like, she just sort of like snorts and doesn't make eye contact. And this is the most like respect that I can give, because if I'm sitting across from Rebecca in that moment and I'm Valencia, I'm grabbing her by the front of her shirt and shaking her and screaming in her face, are you fucking 12? Because there is just no reason to think this at this point. Like, girl, what are you doing? So props to Valencia for handling this like way better than I would, for sure. And better than I think most of us would. And not losing it on Rebecca. It would be completely justifiable. Also, I want to mention Valencia's outfit feels very significant to me this episode. She's wearing like a waffle knit, either a tank or like a long sleeve, and she's got like a soft cardigan over it and this long beaded necklace. It's a very different look from stuff that we've seen her in before. That's much more relaxed, and it feels almost like a signal that she's easing up a little bit and not quite as uptight as she has been. I'm going to keep an eye on her clothes, though, is all I'm saying. And we go then to Josh, who's talking to Father Bra. And Father Bra, oh God, they're bird watching together. And I really, really love when he says something about Josh, like, basing his identity on his relationships. Josh says, don't you base your whole identity on your relationship to Jesus? To which Father Bra looks like his mind was just blown. And I swear to God, I thought that was so fucking well done. I mean, And Josh says, what if somebody calls me Oriental? And Father Brass says, look, Josh, I'm a man of God and I try to believe the best about everyone. But if you think you're going to make it through a whole weekend with a bunch of 70-year-olds and not get called Oriental, you're out of your ever-loving mind. Oh, God, so depressing. And every time that this comes up, Josh or Rebecca cites another like platform that is not meant for posting about relationships and how they've done it. So I think like earlier, Father Brass said his post on Draw Something. Valencia mentions to Rebecca like her comment on something on Open Table. And then later on, Josh says something about all of his followers on Movie Phone, which is a pretty good running joke. And there's also a mention here where, and this ties into what I thought I was going to get this episode. Josh is talking to Father Brown. He says something about how when he first met Rebecca's mother, she asked if he had pierced her daughter's hymen, to which he said something about, no, I thought she already had pierced ears, because he doesn't know what that means. And I thought Rebecca's like introducing Josh to her family. Rebecca's mother is extremely high pressure and basically like browbeat Rebecca into being this like overachieving A student, Ivy League. And I thought Rebecca's entire family was going to be like that. And that Josh being a real dodo, love you, Josh, but you are, was going to be the thing. I thought this was going to be more of what happened with Nathaniel. And instead, everyone is very charmed by him, which honestly, it makes more sense in a way because like, if they were, for example, if she was going to have dinner at her aunt's house and they were sitting around the table and trying to have a discussion, I could see Josh really not being at his best in that situation. But at something like a bar mitzvah or a wedding, everybody is like trying to just have the very basics of small talk, but there's activities, there's drinks, there's a lot to sort of distract you and make it so that the edges are softened on conversations. And Josh is a party guy and he's very likable. So this is really like the ideal for him to be meeting people, is this sort of situation where the fact that he's extremely relaxed, easygoing, and just somebody who it's easy to get along with mostly. This is the prime showcase for that. And I didn't really think about that. I thought that it was going to be a lot of like standing around uptight, drinking cocktails, somebody asking Josh where he went to school and him having to awkwardly like say that, you know, he went to I don't even remember. Did Josh not graduate or did he go to like I don't know. But I thought that's what it was going to be. And I didn't really think about what a bar mitzvah is actually like. I've been to a bat mitzvah and it is like just a huge party. It's a really good time. And there's not a lot of time to sit and chat really. So that just like completely undermined what I thought I was getting. And it was really good because I asked Owen, we were watching it together. And once he meets her family and he starts getting along with her mother and genuinely getting along with her mother, which is the part that Rebecca is like freaked out by. I asked Owen what he would do if I got along really well with his parents. And he just gave me this look of such utter horror. And he didn't even say anything. He just looked at me and was just like clearly it's the kind of thing where if you get along really well with somebody that your partner doesn't at all, and that person's their family, that's a minefield. And like, granted, in Owen's case, his parents, like, there's no reason, they're bad people. But in Rebecca's case, I mean, her mother is like low-key emotionally abusive. So it's not exactly warming me to Josh that he doesn't seem to like see how very valid it is that Rebecca is not having a good time. Later on, when they get to the bar mitzvah and they're interacting with other people, and she's not having a good time, or she's assigning motivations to the things they're saying, that is when I start to be like, okay, Josh, I see your point. But in terms of her mom, I just kept being like, dude, don't. It's one thing to like be the barrier. That's what she wanted from you. That's what she appreciates you doing. But you're getting to a point where it feels like you switched sides. And that's the part where I'm like, you can't be friends with somebody who has been like abusive to her. That's different. You're not playing the game anymore. Now it feels like disloyalty in a way. And I think that's kind of where she was coming from initially. But I appreciated that the show had the bar mitzvah so that we could see this applied to other people who maybe don't necessarily deserve it quite the way that her mother seems to deserve it. Anyway, again, I'm getting way ahead of myself here, but I just thought I should back up and talk about how Heather tries to warn the two of them, and they start talking about how like it's a fucking disco song. We'll never have problems again. It is one of my least favorite songs ever on this show for so many reasons. I appreciate the message, which is you had problems in your relationship, which you did not deal with, and now you just think that they're gone. You're idiots. However, the song itself is just so difficult. It's unpleasant. Their costumes, they're wearing these like blue and red, like heart thing, like jumpsuits that are super unflattering on both of them, because jumpsuits are just unflattering. They just really are. And it goes on a bit long. I just, the only good part of this was Heather deciding to soul train her way out of it, which was a really good time. I like that a lot. So anyway, let's go to the office. Let's talk about what's going on with Daryl. Erica says, Josh looks just like Eric Estrada. I don't know who that is. I'm sorry. Like, I genuinely have no idea. Is that somebody from Soul Train? Is that somebody from nowadays? Is Soul Train still a thing anywhere? But Daryl, oh, bless him. He's trying to get, Erica says he was in beach movies in the 60s and 70s. Oh, okay. Daryl is trying to get Nathaniel to respect him. And the thing about getting someone to respect you is that you can't make it obvious that's your goal because it seems pathetic. You have to just do your thing and be good at what you're doing. And at times, it does require a bit of aggression, I think. Sometimes getting respect, you have to get up in somebody's... I will never forget one of my first days in this kitchen I worked in. There was this dude who I was just walking through the kitchen to get to the bathroom, and one of these prep cooks like stepped in front of me and tried to like say something to me. And I waited until he finished whatever his fucking come on spiel was and said, if you don't get the fuck out of my way, I am going to knee you in the fucking balls. And all of the dudes in the kitchen started cracking up. And he just backed up, and he wasn't even like mad. He was just like, well, I guess that didn't work. And I did not get bothered by him again because I made a show in front of people about it. And depending on somebody's personality, that could make it worse. You have to kind of sense who you're dealing with. Poor Daryl doesn't get this. And he like, the thing is that he's already working from such a negative because he sold the business. And it's not just like that being him handing over his power, which it certainly is. It's that he was stupid enough to do that and not understand the potential problems. That is, I think, really the source of like the complete loss of respect of not just Nathaniel, but everybody in the office. Everybody loves Daryl. We all still love Daryl, but he just made such a rookie, naive mistake. And it is something that is costing everyone so much that it's going to take a lot of work. And I feel bad for him because Daryl is not somebody it's easy to respect. He is a sweet cinnamon roll of a man, good-hearted, very well-intentioned, and just such a loving, good person. But in terms of like, you know, in terms of being somebody that you think of as a person that you want to go for and like ask advice, for example, not really so much. Sorry, Daryl. So when I saw what he was doing here with this suit that still has the tag on it that Paula has to take off, is really, it's you just know how bad it's going to go. And he walks into that fucking meeting with, it's not even a meeting. Nathaniel's on that desk treadmill that it turns out Rebecca used to cook hot dogs, which is amazing. And he tries to suggest that he can be the second in command. And Nathaniel is not hearing it. He is super not interested in having he wants to be the lone wolf in charge of everything who doesn't need help. And I think maybe low-key enjoys this guy scrambling around looking for scraps of respect. I think there's a little bit. And what I really like about this episode is the use of food as a metaphor for what's going on here. We cut from this like awful meeting to Daryl stuffing his face full of jelly beans. And as the episode continues, it becomes more and more extreme. Eventually, Nathaniel gets all of the candy taken out of the cabinets, and then Daryl stuffs candy into the cabinets to watch as it all lands in an avalanche on Nathaniel. And I really like it because like Nathaniel can do what he wants with his own health. If he feels like never eating carbs and just drinking smoothies and walking on its treadmill all day, that is his affair. But once you decide that you're going to empty the entire break room of anything that you do not deem appropriate, that's where we run into a problem, my friend. You are inflicting your beliefs, and that's really what it comes down to. You can try and talk science all you want, but it's a belief system when people get like this with food. It's practically religion. You are inflicting your beliefs on other people who have not consented to this and are not necessarily interested in this. And when we see his sort of meltdown later, and the fact that he has ripped open a bunch of candy and is now sprinting on the treadmill in order to fix the problem, which is that he ate the candy. Man, I felt that shit. I felt it. And the reason that Nathaniel has this meltdown is because his father did not give him the account. And y'all, that phone call with his dad, I don't know who wrote the dialogue for that moment specifically, but that shit felt like it came from somebody's memory. That was something somebody in the writing room or that we're friends with or something that they went through personally, because I just can't with the whole the language that's used. So I just want to like quote him for a second. He's talking to his dad. We're all gearing up to get on Peterson. Once we lock them in, we can hit the ground running. And he's so pumped as he's saying this. And he's got one of those like little earpieces in. He's punching into his hand. And Then stops. Uh-huh. 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 Yep. Yep. Yeah, 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 yeah. Okay, so that's a no. That's fine. I hear you. Yeah, I know. You got to earn it. Nothing gets handed to you. I love that. That's how we do. Once you stop improving, you start losing. I know. I hear you, sir. I love that saying. Mm-hmm. Okay. Bye-bye. Y'all, I want so much for him and Rebecca to bond over this because she nailed it so hard when she said something about his daddy. And she seemed to do it without realizing that, like, she was, up until not long ago, desperately trying to please her mom the same way. They're in a very similar position here, except Rebecca is like it's like they're flip sides of the same coin of what could potentially happen when you push your kid like this and when it's never enough. And one way they can go is being Rebecca, which is a normal human being who hides the fact that they are a normal average person from you, their parent, because they know that you are going to be disappointed in them. Or you can do the Nathaniel, which is push yourself to the absolute breaking point for perfection at all times and hold everyone else to that same standard. And most of us have a blend of these two things in us. But that scene and the way that he like reacts with the emotional, it's not even just emotional eating, it's binging. And then the over-exercising, which is purging. That eating disorder mentality is so incredibly familiar to me, guys. It's a little, like, I'm getting a little emotional talking about it because I just remember so vividly doing this kind of thing to myself. And it's not a totally distant memory either. I mean, as early as, was it this year or the year before? I tried out Weight Watchers. Again, it might have been just the beginning of this year. But it might have been the last. And I realized that Weight Watchers will give you points if you exercise. They will put new points into your food bank. And I got so close to going down this road again, where I was pushing myself to over-exercise, to allow myself to binge, but like do it in a way that was sanctioned somehow. And it's just a bad fucking cycle, man. You can't approach things this way. If you see exercise as a punishment for what you ate, you will resent it and hate it. And it will be a punishment. You have made it so. And this is probably the most I have ever felt for Nathaniel. It's just this moment of like, really, he's pushing himself so hard and he still doesn't get what he thinks he deserves. I don't know if he deserves it. I don't think I've ever seen anybody on the show work harder than him for a thing. So he probably does. But for whatever reason, he didn't reach the criteria that his father wanted. And this self-flagellation is just, it's painful to watch. And what happens is that when Daryl comes in and he falls off and breaks his tooth, he goes to the hospital, gets a temporary tooth put in, and talks to Daryl. And Daryl is a bit of a father figure, but I don't want to reduce him to that because it feels really reductive. It is. Because, it's not just because Daryl's older than this kid, because he relates to him on a fundamental level, having himself had a father who pushed him too hard. And he says to Nathaniel, it's okay to be upset. And Nathaniel says, no, it's not. It's weak. And the way that Daryl looks away and kind of shakes his head is so good. And he says, does this have something to do with your dad? did he not give you the account? Like, he's able to sense it right away. And you can see how pissed he is on Nathaniel's behalf, because Daryl fucking, as much as he, in his way, resents Nathaniel, he knows Nathaniel's good at his job. It's not like he doesn't respect Nathaniel. It's not that he doesn't hate him. You know, he's frustrated and mad at the way things went down, but he's not even like holding it personally against Nathaniel, which is like way better than a lot of us would function, I think. And so I loved this moment of him like kind of being angry on Nathaniel's behalf that he didn't get the account, because he recognizes that as much as he doesn't necessarily like this guy, he does deserve it. And, he says, my dad is a real jerk too. He used to yell at me all the time. He used to call me an emasculated sock puppet. And throughout the end of this episode, Daryl keeps thinking he hears somebody calling him that, and he can't figure out who it is. And then he remembers that that's like, it's in his head. That's where it's from. And I love this moment. He says, I'm going to bury that again. Just hold on. And he takes this moment and kind of pushes that down. I liked that. It's not healthy. It's not good, but I get it. You know, you gotta cope. Gotta do what you gotta do. So then he turns to Nathaniel and says, you're doing really well, Nathaniel. I see how hard you work, how talented you are, how little food you eat. You are a very disciplined young man, and you don't need your dad to tell you that. You have to know that for yourself. And this is the hardest thing in the entire world. Honestly, it is. It is trying to enjoy things for the sake of the good they do you, rather than enjoying them because someone else approves of them or will approve of you because of them, is like number one challenge of a lot of our lives. We are so much more willing to do things out of shame than we are out of self-love. Hate to be the one to say it, but man, shame is a fucking motivator for so many of us. And it's such a shame, man. I don't want to be like this, you know? But it really is true so much of the time. And unlearning that, making it so that you do something because you feel good when you do it, because you like doing it, because it's rewarding to you in some way, and not just because somebody will be mad at you if you don't, or somebody will laugh at you if you don't. Oh, man, Nathaniel, buddy, you gotta figure it out. So do we all. So Nathaniel tells him that he's sorry he's been kind of a dick to him. And then he asks Daryl if he wants to handle the account that's like the largest one, and I can't remember the name of it, but he gives it to him later. And it's a big moment. Daryl is really excited about it. And there's a part of me, I mean, we haven't seen a lot of Daryl doing his job. So I honestly don't have a good idea of if he is any good as the lawyer or not. But yeah, he's talking to Nathaniel, admits that he eats too much candy and maybe needs to back off of that. And then, yeah, Nathaniel, maybe you would like to take the Crestfield account. That's it, right? And Daryl, it's so cute. Nathaniel says, I need a co-pilot. And Daryl takes it and fucking salutes and then knocks the whole candy bowl down. Daryl, never change. I love too that he says earlier about how like his name is still on that wall, and they look and it's like in this tiny print underneath Plimpton, Plimpton, and Plimpton. Oh, it's just the jokes. The jokes! Poor Daryl. Poor George, by the way. George is still here and nobody still knows his name. And when Daryl gets in trouble for putting that candy in there, everybody stands up to I am Spartacus the moment. And George has to say he brought in gummy vitamins. Everybody else is talking about Snickers and Toblerones. But George has to come in here with this like really sad, George, what are you doing? Erica says Scott Michael Foster, who plays Nathaniel, is actually missing that tooth. He can make it pop out at will. Oh, God. Oh, I posted a video of it in the group. Oh, that's so freaky. Oh, I hate it. Like, my dad actually had that for a while. He had his 2 front teeth were fake. Eventually he got implants, but it was a while before he managed to do that. All right, so let's talk about the actual bar mitzvah a little bit more. First, we have the arrival at Rebecca's mother's house, and her mother just being up her ass right away. She's like in her strapless bra because she just moisturized, talking about how Rebecca is like a midnight snacker, and that's why her weight fluctuates so much. She and Josh are trying to have sex even though she's home. And she walks in when they're like still making out and talks about how she walked in on a crime scene at one point. Between you and Isaac Berger from the Model UN, they were having period sex. Oh my God. The way that she sings this, and she's so close to Josh as she sings it, is so deeply uncomfortable. This woman is so funny. God, she's really good. She also calls Josh Oriental like 4 times. And finally, Josh is like, you know what? I'm going to go and help your mom. And he does this thing that is really quite smart in the moment. He decides to be incredibly helpful and roll with whatever she says. Let me tell you guys something. I may seem like an immovable object at times with the way that I talk about things and people and my opinions on stuff. But when it comes to dealing with people like Rebecca's mother, I am a fucking pro. And I don't know what it is. I don't know. I've said before that I'm like excellent at small talk, and this is part of that. You sense what people are looking for from you in a conversation, and you give it to them. And that might be, sometimes they want sympathy. Sometimes they want an argument, and arguing with them is exactly the right thing to do. Acting like don't argue with family or somebody else's family is a blanket like way to approach things. Not always smart. Owen's grandfather loves it when I argue with him. Like he and Owen has commented before on the fact that he thinks that his grandfather like respects me more because I give him a hard time. His grandmother, I do things like that. I offer to help in the kitchen. I do the cleaning up. I do the things that line up with what I know about what's important to them. And so Josh stepping up, let me help thaw the fish. I'm really good at it. My mom buys fish sticks in bulk. And she tries to be like, oh, finally, somebody who's offering to help who isn't selfish, and gets really bitchy. And he steps in front and is like, oh, I will be selfish. And then talks, like eating the fish sticks later. And just handles it very diplomatic. So good at this. That's exactly it. But the catch is, I'm good at this shit when it's not my family. If it's my family, that's a different story. And that's how it is for many people, I think, because when you have your own family, it triggers you. And you have this sort of defense mechanism that just gets shot down immediately. So Rebecca probably could have managed Josh's mother if she had been behaving this way to Josh, but her own mother, I mean, that's a whole other story. So the next morning, him and her mom are getting along like gangbusters. And when they go to the bar mitzvah, the two of them are joking around about shitting dumplings And it's just really like so uncomfortable. And Rebecca, for her part, is wanting Josh to admit how terrible everyone is. She wants Josh to sit back with her and look at them all and snark with her in the corner. She wants to snipe at people and enjoy him being on her side. Which, like, honestly, I'm not mad at her for that. Sure, it does point to her having her own issues that she needs to work on. Because what she seems to see happening isn't exactly what's happening. We have a moment where the rabbi comes up, who, by the way, is Patti LuPone, if I'm not mistaken. And her rabbi is, like, extremely nice to her. But as she walks away, Rebecca just, like, rolls her eyes. And it's like, oh, she keeps on trying to get me into religion when, like, that's not what just happened. And so I'm not trying to say that what Rebecca wanted from Josh is super healthy or without its own problems. I'm just saying I really understand it. You just want your partner to be on your side. It's a natural impulse, you know? And as somebody who was married to somebody who I did not feel was on my side a lot of the time, it can really make you feel like they don't understand you as a person. And that's what's happening. She and Josh don't really understand each other as people. Josh is, as she puts it, West Coast, sunny, bright, happy. Even though he has his own, like, hang-ups with his family, they obviously have a pretty healthy relationship and get along fairly well. And he sees the good in people and wants to be having a good time and is open to doing that. And Rebecca is much more judgmental. She's I was going to say a bit of a snob, but she's like a huge snob. Like, we know that. And she has a lot more baggage and trauma from the way that she grew up and the culture that she grew up in, which is captured beautifully in the song Don't Forget We Suffered. Guys, this song is honestly one of the most... Remember that we suffered. This DJ is terrific. Remember that we suffered. My grandma is a survivor. Remember that she suffered. Guys, honestly, I don't know what it is that feel like... I am not Jewish. I don't have Jewish family. But this whole thing when they say that it's like kind of wrong to be happy if you don't like also remember, man, that's like something that I really get in my bones, that like being happy is something that you should be like low key ashamed of, you know? There's just there's something like really puritanical about it. But it's coming from like a very different direction where it's not, I don't know, but it's just like, it's one of those songs that I'm like, I found really, really funny. And at the same time, I was like, should I find this funny? Is this offensive for me to find it funny? I can't decide if this is okay or not. But it's done super well. So, oh my God, Patti LuPone singing and then like gasping for breath and continuing to sing while she's like circling Rebecca and shoving her into a chair. It is such a funny moment, guys. I love this so much. Also, can we talk about Rebecca's gorgeous dress, which I love so much? It's this like purple and red pattern on a black background. Oh my God, it's gorgeous. I want it so much. So yeah, this ends with Rebecca being like really unsure what to do because Josh is being a good guy who's getting along with her family. And if you had told her that he would get along well with her family and he would have a great time, she might have thought that was fine. But when you're in the moment seeing it and living it, when you're not having a good time, it's very different. And he says to her, he says, I wanted you to see how miserable everyone is. It's all like a double, a double meaning. And he's like, I don't know, Rebecca. The only person who seems miserable here is you. So then we have the moment with the therapist. And guys, her moment of just leaning forward in total sheer excitement as she realizes that Rebecca is finally beginning to come to the point is so good. I love her so much. Oh, God. And she's just like trying so hard to like lead her down the path. And then when Josh comes in and her screaming and collapsing into the chair, it's honestly, it's the best. Guys, it's such a good ending. It's such a good ending. I loved it. It's such a good episode. Some overtime. I have to wrap. Man, though, this show is really dealing in some shit. Honestly, it's like a funny, fluffy in its way show that's dealing with very real, patterns and stuff. I love it. So good. All right, I got to wrap. Thank you very much to Megan for commissioning this episode. I cannot wait for the next one. Yay. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.